I listen to gospel topics. I think I told you last time, or an earlier class, I'm a huge music fan, but I've started to listen to gospel stuff and less music so that I can kind of fill my mind with faith-promoting sort of things. And I found a couple of Christian ministers who have fantastic abilities to teach about faith. This morning I was listening to Andrew Wommack. He taught something that I thought was really powerful, so I'm just going to share that with you really, really quick. He said, there's the story in the Bible of the Peter and the guys out on the Sea of Galilee, and the storm came up, and they had started, if you read the story carefully, they had started from the other side before it even got dark. And on the third watch of the night, which is like from 3 in the morning to 6 in the morning, by that time, usually if you've got calm sailing, you can row across the Sea of Galilee in about 2 hours. It's only 2 or 3 miles across. But the weather was so bad, they had toiled all night trying to get across, and they were only about halfway across. And the storm was so bad that it filled the boat up with water, so they were going to sink. I mean, they were in the process of sinking in a terrible storm with all the waves and all the wind and everything like that. Well, while they're struggling, now imagine, so now you've been doing this from like 6 at night, all night long until say 4 in the morning. So you've been struggling for 10 hours just trying to get across so you can get out of this terrible storm. And it said they saw Jesus walking on the water, and he would like he was going by them. So they're fighting, struggling, and Jesus is just like this, unperturbed, just walking. He acts like he's going to walk right by him. Was Jesus really going to walk right by him? Why did Jesus act like he was just going to walk right by? He could have said, I'm coming. Okay? But he didn't. He didn't make that sound either. Okay? Okay? He acted like he was going to walk right by. Why? I think it was he wanted them to have to exercise their faith, to ask for help. You have to ask. You have to ask. So as he was walking by, they said, Master, Master. And then he came over. He came over, and they said, don't you care that we're going to drown? That we perish? And he said, don't you care? And of course he cared. That's why he was out walking in the middle of the lake at night, in the middle of the morning, Of course he cared. He was really there for them, but they had to ask him, and that's so we got to be humble and ask. So he got in, and he calmed the sea, got after them for their unbelief. Can you imagine? I've often thought, if I was Peter, or if I was John, or whatever, and I'm not those guys, that's why they're Peter and I'm Doug Dean, but it was hard being his disciple, because if your faith was this big, and his faith was this big, and he'd just call you on your crap and just, where's your faith, and poor Peter's like, So it was not easy, okay? But as soon as he got on and calmed the water, then he transported the boat, and we don't know how, but miraculously, not only that did he calm the sea, but miraculously the boat immediately just went to the side. So it was like a mile out in the middle of nowhere. He calmed the water, and immediately the boat just goes, I'm there, I'm on the side. And the apostles, it uses all these adjectives like incredibly amazed. I mean, it's just like, they were just like, oh my gosh. What just happened? Just trying to process, just this series of miracles that they were experiencing. And then what Andrew Wommack brought up is he said, and then the scripture says, for, which is a conjunction, for, because of their hardness of heart, they had not considered the miracle of the loaves and the fishes. Okay. Before that, he had taken a little boy's sack lunch that had just a little bit of bread and a little bit of fish in there, and he had fed 5,000 people. Taking just a little handful of food and just fed 5,000 people, which was incredibly miraculous, right? And it says, because of the hardness of their hearts, they had not considered that miracle. So that kind of like flew over their heads. They were yes, it was a miracle, but it didn't sink into them how big of a miracle it was. So when he calmed the sea and just transported their boat to the side in an instant, they were just like blown, they were just like really, really, really amazed. And he said, so what is hardening your heart? Hardening your heart is not believing in God's miracles, that he can help you, right? That's what Jesus just defined it. Now, Andrew Wommack, being a Christian minister who only studies the Bible and doesn't have the Book of Mormon, I connected up in my head Nephi's experience where he said the same thing. Remember when when Lehi came back and had just had the dream of the tree of life and all of that, and he told it to Laman and Lemuel, and they were just like, what? And then Nephi, what did Nephi do? Nephi says, I want to see it. I want to know too. And so he had the faith to go out, and he prayed, and it was shown him, and he said, I noticed some things that my father didn't notice because he was so caught up kind of in the main things he was seeing. And so he tells us a little bit more, that he had noticed that Lehi hadn't really noticed, okay? And when he got back, the brothers, Laman and Lemuel, were fighting. They were disputing and arguing about what it meant. And he says, why are you arguing? We do not understand the dream of our father. And he says, well, have you asked the Lord? No, because the Lord maketh no such thing known unto us. Think about the difference. Nephi goes out and has the faith to get the vision. And now would we have that faith? And the brothers just completely lost this, they don't get it. It's all a mystery to them. He comes back and says, did you ask? No. And he says, how can you be so hard-hearted? So Nephi's definition was like Jesus' definition. Jesus' definition was you saw a miracle and you didn't understand it and you didn't appreciate what it was. And Nephi's was, you won't even ask to get help because you don't even believe that you'll get any help. And how can you be so hard-hearted? Okay, and then he goes on to explain, if you keep the commandments and if you act in faith, believing that you receive, you'll receive. Okay, so he gave him the little formula. Nephi is so awesome. As another guy that might have been amazing to be around, but man, it was just always doing the right things for the right reasons and having all that faith. So that made me think, you don't have to be a mean SOB to have a hard heart. You don't have to beat your brother with a staff, with a rod, to be hard-hearted. Hard-hardness is another word for not believing, right? It's just not having the faith to connect that up and do it. And so what Wommack was saying, that he's raised his son from the dead, he's raised his wife from the dead, he heals people all the time. Incredible faith guy, and I'm just learning so much by reading his material. He said, even after he was a minister for many years and had a lot of faith, the Lord showed him that he had a hard heart. And he was like, oh, what do you mean? And the Lord taught him, your heart needs to have more belief. It needs to be more open to belief. And so he started working on getting into belief more. So I think that's a great lesson for us. Does that kind of make sense? So we got to kind of think, just being a member of the church is not having it all done. Being a member of the church is kind of getting an entrance into, you can learn now. And we need to grow in our faith and have the power to see visions and dreams and work miracles. If my wife died and it wasn't, I'd like to think that I'd have the faith. I'm working on it. When I started doing this, my faith was right here. I think Andrew Wommack's faith is right here. And since I've been studying this stuff, I think my faith is about right here. And I'm just, in all humility, I'm just telling you that most members of the church, their faith is down here. Now, there are exceptions. I've got a son-in-law who has a lot of faith. It's just a very simple faith. God will do it. And sometimes I overthink things, and I look at all the things that might lead to unbelief. And what these guys are saying is, no, you gotta look at the things that feed your belief so that you can have all these miraculous help from God in your life. It's really, really